This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. The surge in positive COVID-19 cases here in the Virgin Islands continues. Hospitalizations are at a record high right now, leaving healthcare workers stretched to their limits. Our USVI News' Ali Bourne-Vanek has the very latest.
Emily, it's yet another week where the COVID numbers are escalating again, and another week where the numbers are higher than ever. There are currently 370 active cases of COVID-19 in the territory, 122 on St. Croix, 238 on St. Thomas, and 10 on St. John. The Department of Health is reporting 39 hospitalizations and also reports that the staff is exhausted after weeks and weeks of a surge.
The data that I've just read is the highest that we have seen. Our hospitals are full. Our staff is burnt out. We are mourning, some of us personally, some of us professionally. We don't know how else to ask, but I'm asking and I'm begging that you please do your research. Understand the importance of vaccination. Understand for yourself. Don't take advice from a neighbor's, uncle's, friend's doctor who is not treating you. I'm asking on behalf of the Department of Health, my commissioner, the doctors, the nurses, EPI, everybody to please take this seriously as we try to get out of this together.
It's not that you have an overwhelming amount of people come to your hospital one time. It's the accumulation over time of patient after patient that wears down our health staff. The frightening thing about this is we're in a better place today than we were a year ago, in some ways and worse in the next. You see, because even though you don't have COVID, you might just have appendicitis. Because the hospital is full of COVID patients, you may not be able to get care. And that's what we're saying is so important with us. With the advent of this vaccine and about 18 months of information on how the virus spread and how we can protect ourselves. We have that. I say this because the fact remains undisputable. He said it today, you heard Dr. Sim say it, of all the patients we have in the hospital, all of them that we have in our care, not one, zero, not one of them is vaccinated. I stress this point because the current surge of hospitalizations and deaths, not just here, but nationwide, is absolutely avoidable.
Government House and the Department of Health reports that they have been hiring and flying in medical staff and nurses from off-island to relieve our current staff, again due to exhaustion, which doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. In St. Thomas, Ali Bourne-Vanek, USVI News.
The Department of Education's feeding initiative is suspended in the St. Thomas-St. John district due to a rise in COVID-19 cases among food service workers. The No VI Child Goes Hungry feeding initiative is suspended until further notice. The meal distribution program was started to resume next week, or slated to resume rather next week across the territory. However, only the St. Croix district program is going to operate as planned on the 23rd, beginning then. Organizers say the health and safety of students and staff are critical, and while it was a difficult decision to make, the recent rise in infections and the low vaccination rates among this employee population, the right thing to do was to postpone operations. The assistant commissioner says, quote, "We hope to reopen soon to provide warm and nutritious meals to students in the St. Thomas-St. John communities," end quote. There have been at least 8 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among food service workers in these districts in recent months. Last week, we heard from Virgin Islands Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett about mitigation efforts in the territory to help try to stop the spread of COVID-19. Today, our Washington correspondent, Matt Knadler, continues our extended one-on-one interview with Congresswoman Plaskett. They talk about the 2 major infrastructure packages going through Congress right now.
Big day for infrastructure as well. I know this is heading your way next over to the U.S. House, but kind of give me your thoughts on, the infrastructure package as a whole, the $1.2 trillion plan, and the next steps it's going to take in the House.
Well, I think that there's a lot of meat in this one plan, the infrastructure, the bipartisan plan, which is not even the complete plan of what the Biden administration is proposing to do. There are several components of this which are particularly important to me, of course, which is highway funding, which is supportive infrastructure. But additionally, Um, the president's plan in this bipartisan agreement has large portions of it which support moving from fossil fuel to clean energy, really having a lot of interest in areas, particularly it was noted that communities of color and minority communities have higher levels of Superfund and not clean energy sites like the island of St. Croix, and that there's additional funding to support reinventing those areas and creating greater job training and support for clean energy jobs, which is something that I'm really hoping that the Virgin Islands, really reaching out to the governor, the Department of Labor, even our partners at Lime Tree and other places to see, and Viapco, the old Martin Marietta site, to see how we can take advantage of that.
That's actually a good point. If it's all right, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the work you guys have been doing on that. Kind of give us an update of, is there a way to maybe almost retrofit that site or perhaps turn the Lime Tree site into
Lime
green
Tree
energy?
itself is owned by, there's a lease agreement with a company, and they're going to do what they think is financially expedient within the law with EPA. But I have been pointing out to EPA as well as to the White House that we have a responsibility to not just make areas compliant, but to make them better areas as well, to give them the resources and the support to do that, partnering with them, supporting them. So are there ways that we can use the sites that surround that to create additional industries, to create additional manufacturing, whether it's transshipment, whether it's solar generation, whether it's development of panels, et cetera, that can be used throughout the rest of the Caribbean. Let's look at these things and see how this funding in this bipartisan infrastructure plan can support that.
Perfect. Lastly on the infrastructure portion, this is one of those areas where it's going to be, when we get to reconciliation, the human infrastructure side of this, everyone kind of has their pet project, things they want to include in this. Are there any particular areas you were focusing on and areas you want to include funding for in this?
Sure. I mean, as you know, the plan, the original infrastructure plan also allowed members to designate projects within certain structures. And one of my, I wouldn't even call it a pet project, but a complete overwhelming passion of mine has been, and in the House version, there was funding for a ferry system between St. Croix and St. Thomas. This would allow cargo to move between, it would not just be a passenger ferry, but also allow cars and cargo to go at a subsidized rate between St. Croix and St. Thomas. And so members on the House side, at least, are really pushing to ensure that those designated projects remain in the bill so that our districts, who we have worked with our governors and our local government to identify components that would be most impactful, that those things remain.
Some good updates. And coming up tomorrow, part 3 of their conversation will focus on Congresswoman Plaskett's work on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. If you missed part 1, you can find it on our website, usvicbs.com. News from across the Caribbean now. Rescue efforts are underway in Haiti following a major earthquake over the weekend that killed nearly 1,300 people and left thousands more injured. The region could see even more damage this week, with tropical depression Grace bringing the potential for heavy rain, flooding, and landslides. Reporter Gabe Gutierrez reports from Port-au-Prince.
This morning, a country in crisis. People tearing through rubble to find any signs of life after a monstrous 7.2 magnitude earthquake on Saturday devastated southwest Haiti.
People just started screaming everywhere on the streets and just out of, panic and fear.
The massive quake flattening buildings across Haiti's southern peninsula. Families who lost their homes are now sleeping on nearby soccer fields. Hospitals already pushed to the brink by the COVID pandemic forced to set up triage centers outside. People in desperate need of aid evacuated by air to Port-au-Prince. An international effort to help is now underway, the U.S. sending a 65-person search and rescue team from Virginia at the request of the Haitian government. The U.S. Coast Guard is also helping airlift the injured.
Overall, how significant is the devastation in that part of the island?
It's a pretty significant scope of damage, a substantial amount of work to be done.
This is the latest devastation for a country that has never fully recovered from an earthquake in 2010 that killed as many as 300,000 people. Haiti is also already dealing with political chaos sparked by the brazen assassination of its president last month. And now, Tropical Storm Grace is forecast to hit Haiti by tomorrow, bringing punishing rain that could lead to flash flooding and new mudslides. Yet another blow to a country in crisis.
Now, this earthquake over the weekend was actually more powerful than the one in 2010, but the difference is that its epicenter was in the southwestern part of the country, much more rural than Port-au-Prince. But still, there are now new concerns about Tropical Depression Grace, which is expected to bring torrential rain and potentially more mudslides, further complicating the rescue effort.